we are taught to be disconnected from ourselves. And it is not our fault, but it is our responsibility, if we want to live differently, to do this tandem process of the unlearning the things that we've been taught and learning new ways of connecting with ourselves, practicing what would it look like to matter to myself today.
Welcome to the SheSpeaks podcast, a podcast created to elevate women's voices across diverse backgrounds on topics impacting women. I'm your host, Aliza Freud, founder and CEO of SheSpeaks. Each week, I have a conversation with a woman expert who shares her best how-to advice on a topic so we can learn how to better do that one thing from a woman who's been there and done that. Our hope is that these conversations help you feel more inspired to speak up and be heard in your own life and work. Now, on to the episode. Welcome back to the show. Hope you're all having a wonderful week so far. So if you are someone who has ever struggled with identifying and figuring out, what is it that you need? What is it that you want? Whether that's personal or professional, then this is an episode for you. I talked to Mara Glatzel. She is the author of Needy: How to Advocate for Your Needs and Claim Your Sovereignty. And this is chock full of very tangible ideas and advice for women who are thinking about maybe what is it that you want from your life? What is it that you need? And so Mara gives us very specific advice on how to identify our needs and also how to ask yourself, how do I want to live? What kind of life do I want to live? So this is a great episode. I can't wait for you to hear it. We're going to jump right into it. Here we go. Mara, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Well, I'm looking forward to talking with you because you talk about some things that are new. The vernacular is new to me. You talk about energy rhythms, natural energy rhythms. I'm really excited to learn more about that. But why don't we first just start with you talking a little bit about yourself and your story?
Yeah, I had a turning point in my life. I guess I'll begin there. I was in grad school about 15 years ago now and was really burnt out, was coming to terms with my people pleasing, was coming to terms with the fact that I had so many defenses up. I was so afraid of being rejected or abandoned that I had created all of these kind of coping mechanisms that would show up in terms of my perfectionism and people pleasing and really presenting a very curated version of myself to the world around me and even in my closest relationships, and was rapidly becoming burnt out because, of course, that requires an enormous energy usage, right? Holding up that image of yourself and also beating yourself up because privately that you don't live up to it, and falling into that gap between who you are and who you think that you should be. And so I did this work initially for myself to learn how to be more authentic in my relationships, to be more authentic in my relationship with myself, and to really figure out a way to communicate honestly, to ask for what I needed, to be in right relationship with others and with myself. And my work grew from that personal lived experience and from knowing what it's like to be burnt out and knowing just how much energy we pour into being something that we're not. And why do we think that we have to have it all together in that kind of way? And so now I coach and I write and I teach from that perspective that your fullest expression of yourself is what's best for you and for your life and for your relationships, and helping people to bridge that gap, to really divest from the stories that they carry that who they are isn't enough or isn't good enough, and begin to live in a way that is more authentic, but is also more honest, right? That's in alignment with how much energy they have and with what they want to prioritize, even knowing what they want to prioritize to begin with, what their values are, what their needs are. And it's really rich work.
Yeah.
And we all come by it honestly. I come by it honestly.
Let's talk a little bit about that process because as you're talking, I'm thinking to myself, a topic that we cover a lot in our conversations for the show is this notion of, as women, we know that self awareness is really important, but we really struggle to get there. And as you're talking, I'm thinking that this is not just about building some tools to get better at self awareness, but it's also coming to terms, and it's almost like there needs to be this other step too of saying it's also my perceptions of what I should be. It's not
Mhm.
just me understanding what's going on with me. It's also taking this step back and saying, you talked about the gap between who you are and who you think you should be. And that's probably a big part too of what gets in the way of self awareness. Can you talk a little bit about, for women who are struggling to get in touch? Because a lot of what you're talking about presumes that you can even get there, get into that frame of mind, and really get to a point where you're understanding your true self and getting through, sort of peeling away all
Mhm.
of the things that we think we should be. Especially, as you said, if you're a people pleaser, how do you take that away? How do you get that out of the way from, okay, what is it that I want to do versus what I'm doing? Because, for example, I think it's going to please my parents.
Yeah, I wanna start by saying that I do presume that we
Mhm.
can all rebuild an authentic and real connection with ourselves. And I think that's so important to state outright because so many of us have lost faith that's even possible. It seems so complicated, it seems murky because of our conditioning. We may not trust ourselves, may not trust our own minds. And
Mhm.
my work is rooted firmly in the belief that we can rebuild self trust and that we
Mhm.
can rebuild self connection wherever it is that you are right now. And we all come to this work from a multitude of points. And I think, in particular, for women and for people of all genders who are socialized as girls, that we really struggle with authentically relating to our bodies because of diet culture. And diet culture isn't the only piece. Of course, patriarchy plays a role in this, white supremacy plays a role in this. But the way that diet culture comes between us and being in connection with our bodies. So for me, as a child in a bigger body, I completely disconnected from my body's truth
Mhm.
because my body was bad and wrong and something to be controlled. And so trusting my body was not something that I was trying to do. And I was taught that. I was taught that disconnect.
Mhm.
And that we come at that through a multitude of places, but I think I'm able to see that toxic productivity culture is formed right on top of diet culture and the way that we're taught that there's one right way to be and that kind of like high vibe 24/7 online productive forward facing tangible results. And again, that disconnect because what is right and good is the thing that you're doing, that you're producing, showing your work and doing it well and perfectly even. And you aren't even a part of the equation. Don't have a bad day, don't have any needs, don't have anything, just
Yeah.
produce.
Yeah.
So I share these because for those of us who are coming to this moment thinking, I am really disconnected from myself, I find it's useful to honor the fact that we are taught to be disconnected from ourselves. And it is not our fault, but it is our responsibility if we want to live differently to do this tandem process of the unlearning the things that we've been taught and learning new ways of connecting with ourselves. And not feeling like we need to rush that. That rushing piece is a piece of that culture that we're trying to divest from. Really beginning with talking to ourselves. People pleasers in particular have honed skills of communicating with others, of
Mhm.
knowing just what they need, of giving it to
Mhm.
them before they even know that they need it, right? So
Mhm.
these are transferable skills. You already possess them probably.
Mhm.
And so I'm not talking about learning something new. I am talking about taking those skills and turning them on your relationship with yourself. And it's not that's not complicated because often we don't feel like we're worthy of our own attention, but practicing it, practicing what would it look like to matter to myself today? Checking in with yourself. What do I need right now? And being patient. Those answers might not come quickly, but with time and with attention and with that patience, that relationship will be built.
Yeah. You said something that I think is so powerful. And I've thought about personal agency a lot. And I think a lot of us deal with, which is it's not your fault, but it's your responsibility. Right.
Mhm.
And I think that recognition that we can wallow in the, it's not my fault that this happened, or that this is the way it is, or this is how I am. But it is our responsibility to put ourselves into positions to feel fulfilled and to be happy, whatever that means for you. And the way you just said that, I think is so powerful, because I do think we are in a time where for a long time it wasn't even being recognized what, for example, let's just say right now we're talking about women, what the beauty industry, for example, has done
Mhm.
to us as women. Even just the fact that they have taken the word from us, they've taken the word beauty. It shouldn't be like a business, but they've taken that word from us, and the implications of what we see in advertising and all of these things and messages that come at us. But at the same time, because we are now acknowledging that this happened, I think we can get stuck in the wallowing and that this is
Mhm.
not my fault. How do we make that shift?
Such a good question. A facet of that is really this piece of waiting for our lives to begin. I remember when I was a kid and I was on all these diets, this is just such a blueprint for it. It's like, well, this whole thing doesn't matter because someday I'll get my shit together and at that point my life will begin. So everything
Mhm.
that's happening here, wallow, 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 work, 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 work. And this feeling of when I get there, my life will start. And all the while, really often berating ourselves for not living up to that ideal and thinking that berating ourselves is what's quote unquote motivating us to get from here to there and doing ourselves a real injustice and a lot of damage. And so I think when I think about that idea of what can help us transition from where we are to where we want to be, I love the question of how do I want to live?
Mm.
And I remember this day so clearly. I was sitting in my great aunt's living room, and she was telling me at the age of 76 how she had been on a diet every single day of her entire life since she was 12 years old and had never gotten any thinner.
Mm.
And this was a time where this was a while ago, and I was pretty deeply entrenched in diet culture at that time. And that feeling of, I'm going to spend my whole life like this. I'm going to spend my whole life like this.
Ah.
Thinking, oh, this day, this week doesn't matter. This life doesn't matter because I'm just working my way, biding my time, earning what I want for myself, whether that's rest or care or love or acceptance. And that belief that who I am right now is not deserving of any of those things.
Yeah.
And so when I say, how do you want to live? For me, I want to live in such a way that I deserve access to all of those things as I am. And believing that is a practice by which I don't, that is, that sometimes that is hard to believe. That is hard to hold on to because we all carry these narratives and we all carry these moments, memories, lived experiences that tell us that that's a lie. It might feel touch and go. That's okay. You're not doing it wrong. Reorienting yourself in such a way that you are deserving of your own care, even now, even here. We talk about how our life isn't, our life is what happens between here and the destination, wherever it is that we think that we're going. When we are so focused on a thing, whatever that thing is, it becomes this pattern of punting our joy, our needs, our love,
Mhm.
whatever, out in front of us until we get to the next thing. And there's always going to be another thing. So really trying to reclaim that by saying, how would I live today if I
Yeah.
had already quote unquote made it or gotten there? What would I do differently? What would I allow myself? And being curious more than being controlling. I think these are the pieces. This is how we rework our relationship with ourselves. Being curious, trying things out, experimenting, seeing how it
Mhm.
feels, practicing, living
Yeah.
as if, even if you don't wholly believe it yet.
Yeah. I love what you said about how sometimes for many of us, it can feel like we're just waiting for our lives to begin. Oh, when I lose that weight, I will be happy. When I, and not recognizing the value and the joy and all of the stuff associated with the journey itself. And I was talking with a guest recently, and I said that I felt like I got to a point in my life where I shifted and I thought, this part of my life was very much focused on achievement. How am I going to achieve? How am I going to achieve? How am I going to achieve? Which you very easily get into the mindset of the waiting for your life to begin. Like when I get to this point, then all will be good. I can be calmer. I can be this. And when I realized that what I really wanted to focus on was understanding, I had this really interesting mental shift because I almost gave myself license to enjoy what was happening and to recognize what was happening. When we're so focused on the achievement, you barely enjoy what's happening. You don't even
Mhm.
think about it. You're not in the moment. You don't really think about that. So it's making this, for me, it was a shift, a mental shift to, okay, I'm going to actually enjoy what's happening right now or be in this moment that's happening right now. And that was just a game changing shift for me personally, because I can relate to everything you're saying about, oh, when this thing happens and this is when my life will begin. This is when things will truly be good. And we just miss the good stuff. We miss all of it along the way if we have that mindset.
Yeah, and our lives are the entirety of our lives are what is happening along the way. And the pressure, man, if you're always waiting for the thing to happen, the pressure when the thing happens is so intense. I was talking to a friend of mine recently because I just came out with my first book, Needy, and I've wanted to write a book my entire life. And I could remember so clearly a time where there would be so much pressure. It's like this thing is happening. You've worked on it for years. Your book is finally here. It's pub day. Just the pressure of this
Mhm,
is the moment. This is the day that is going to
mhm,
change my life. And really noticing what an honor or what a marking of growth for me that
mhm,
yes, putting the book out into the world, it is huge. I'm here to celebrate it. It is massive. The book is awesome. But this one moment doesn't heal everything that came before, doesn't change everything that comes after. It is just a piece of the puzzle. And I
mhm,
think part of the double-edged sword of always looking towards that next milestone is that when it happens, you can't even enjoy it because you're looking up and out for the next thing or
Yes.
rewarding yourself for your hard work with more hard work. And just that pressure and the letdown, because of
Mm.
course, no one day unilaterally changes everything. Of course not. And that's not because you did anything wrong, but I can remember in that my own ambitious, driven, perfectionist time, just the amount of internal pressure that was growing as it got to that point of this is the thing and now it's going to happen, now it's going to change everything, and then that huge letdown when it didn't.
Yeah. That is such great insight. And I want to talk about needs. I want to talk about the book. What does it mean when we're needy? What does it look like and what does it mean?
Yeah, so I love the word needy. I chose it intentionally, and it has become this sort of fun litmus test for whether or not this book is right for people, because usually they hear the word and they feel some kind of way. And that is
Mhm.
intentional.
Mhm.
And for me, it's a reclamation of this idea. We can all conjure an idea of what it means to be a needy person and that thing that you don't want to be, right? That thing that comes between you and the belonging or the relationship or the job that you're looking for, especially for women, especially for any of us socialized as girls, that the messiness of
Mhm.
yearning is something to be avoided at all costs.
Yeah.
And as I was writing the book, I was thinking about what is neediness apart from a desire to matter, a desire to be prioritized. We all have needs. Having needs is a fact of being in a human body. We need rest, we need sleep. We are a highly social species. We need one another. We need to co
Mhm.
regulate. We need community. We need to make sense of things in a way that we can understand them. And there is nothing wrong with having needs. There's nothing wrong with being needy. We all are. But the way that we are socialized to be in relationship with our needs is to suppress them until inevitably we can't suppress them anymore. It's very similar to a restrict binge cycle, I think, but like a relational restrict binge cycle
Mhm.
where you're trying to be cool, you're trying to be chill, you're trying not to have too many needs, you're trying to be really lovable, really easygoing until eventually all of these little things that you haven't asked for or feeling like an afterthought just builds up and then you explode, usually over something small, usually in a way that doesn't make sense logically, maybe. And now you are needy. And so it's not the presence of your needs that's the problem. It's what
Mhm.
happens when we ignore them and pretend that we don't have them and don't invite them into our relationships. And they build up because, of
Yeah.
course, they do. And so, in the book, I talk about how to figure out what you need and, how to begin asking for it. And mostly how to begin asking yourself for it, because so much of this work is rebuilding that relationship with yourself, moving from self abandonment to self partnership, and really getting into right relationship with yourself first before you go try and talk to somebody else, because that's the other thing where it's messy because we're trying to figure it out on the fly, or we ask for one thing and it turns out I really don't care about that thing, I really wanted this thing, or
Right.
none of these things matter because what I want to know is that I matter to you. And if you could
Right.
just address that. So, rebuilding your relationship with yourself so that you even have a working understanding of what you personally require in
Yeah.
order to exist and thrive.
So let's say I wanted to take a step towards understanding how to identify my needs. Is there something that we can do? Any advice you can give for how someone can go about figuring out what their needs are?
Yeah. So I would recommend starting a daily check-in
Mm.
practice. I really like doing this in the morning. You don't have to. I find the morning it's nice because you can orient your day in the direction of your needs. But really, it's a practice of asking myself, how do I feel? Sometimes that can be a challenging question. It is sometimes easier to say, like, how's my body feeling? Am I dehydrated?
Mhm.
Am I tired? Am I sore? You
Mhm.
could also print out a little feelings wheel and have it right next to your bed to do a
Mhm.
check in with yourself.
Yep.
And how do I feel? What do I need? If that question feels really loaded, you might ask yourself, what does my body need from me
Mm,
today? But just that practice of starting your day with a check in, because
mhm.
what do most of us do? It's like we wake up, we abandon ourselves from the get, we move towards our to do list, our coffee, our this, or that, whatever it is that is on our plate that day. And our multitude of selves don't even factor into the equation.
Yeah.
And so when I say that I check in with myself and then how I feel, I orient my day in that direction. It's useful, right?
Right.
I woke up this morning. I was on vacation with my family for the last week. Our plane was delayed. We didn't end up getting in till midnight. Woke up this morning feeling tired and
Mm,
thinking to myself, okay, I had this big day of work planned and I have this interview. The interview is the most important thing to me today. So I'm going to prioritize that. And then, however I feel after that, I'm going to follow in suit. Versus when I was really operating in that ambitious and perfectionistic
mm,
mode, I would say, okay,
mhm.
Mara, here's your to do list for the day.
Yeah.
However you feel, be damned. We do not have time for you or your feelings.
Yeah.
And that's a recipe for burnout. And I'm not saying that it's always possible to reorient your entire day. Of
Right.
course not. These can be small shifts, but it's really this act of taking yourself into account and
Yeah.
asking that question of what do I need?
Yeah.
It's not like this huge operation. It's the
Yeah.
repetition of mattering
Mhm.
to yourself.
I love that. That is really useful advice and hopefully can give people who are hearing this an opportunity to start that process of how do I identify what's going on with me? How do I know what my needs are? Because unless you know what your needs are, there's no way it's going to be really hard to achieve them or to get them met if you don't know what they even are. I would also love if you could talk a little bit about how do we get ourselves into this frame of mind because I think many of us, and again, I'm going to, because our audience is mostly women, I'm going to say this again from a female perspective, that I think we are taught just anthropologically, socially, all these different ways that meeting our own needs is a selfish thing to do, right? That I always think to myself, that airplane announcement, put your mask on yourself before on someone else, is for women. That is because men are like,
Mhm.
oh yeah, I'm gonna put that mask on myself first, and then I'll help my kid who might be sitting next to me. But I think that it underlies for me this idea that when we take care of our needs, when you say self care, if you'd said self care to me 5 years ago, I bet I have all these other people I have to care for.
Mm.
So, how do we get our heads into the frame of mind that it is not selfish to take care of our own needs, to identify what our needs are and to have them met?
Mhm. Yeah. Where I often begin with myself and with my clients is with a kind of cheeky question, which is, how is that working for you?
Mm.
And I say that with so much love and so much knowledge of how that is working for you, which is to say, it is not. Or
Mm.
it is for a time and then it is not. Or we're working so hard to keep it up, but inside we're just crumbling. And
Mhm.
not because I really want to speak to this, because it's not because there's something wrong with us. It is a setup. The whole
Mm.
system is a setup. And this idea that we can pour from a cup that is never being refilled just eternally, and then that's what
Mhm.
is right and best,
Mhm.
is a setup.
Yeah.
And it's a seductive one because we are taught that is what is right and good.
Yeah.
That's what it means to be a good wife or a good
Mhm.
partner. That's what it means to be a
Mhm.
good best friend, a good daughter, a good
Mhm.
mother.
Mhm.
And of course, you want to be good. I see this parenting small children. I have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. I want to be a good mother. The conditioning around motherhood is so
Mhm.
heavy. And you feel like I've been given this precious thing and I don't want to mess it up. And I feel like I'm messing it up all the time. And I just
Mhm.
have to work harder. I just have to do more. And there's such a heaviness to that. But what is true is that it is unsustainable to
Mhm.
give on end without considering our own needs and our own restoration. And so when I'm thinking about this for myself and like
Mhm.
putting it into right order for myself, I'm thinking about how, okay, I am the vessel,
Mhm.
everything that I do. So taking care of my kids, working with all my clients, running my courses. I also do way too much volunteer work, to all of my special volunteer projects, all these things that I love. I am the best vessel for that. And so
Mhm.
if I'm not in good working order, everything that I care about suffers.
Mhm.
Really putting that into that framework of, if I care about all of these things, if I care about my children and how connected to me they feel, I have to care about myself, because it
Yeah.
is an unfair expectation that I should be able to give on end without anything. And
Yeah.
so I find doing that little flip can help to really
Mhm.
see, wow, actually, everybody, everything is better when I'm getting my needs met.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll talk to women who are really struggling with asking for what they need from their partners and having partner buy in. And at first can be a little bit tricky because it's upending the status quo in your life, but really starting to notice, hey, our relationship is better, my relationship with the kids are better. I better. Everything is better when
Yeah.
I am getting my needs met, and not just me. And same for you, and same for you. What the problem is that we're out of sync because predominantly women are tending to the needs of everyone around them. So everyone else's needs are met
Yeah.
and your needs go by the wayside. And then, you're flipping out or you're burning out
Yeah.
or you're getting sick. And I think for those of us who know what it's like to get significantly burnt out, I'll do anything to avoid that now
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's completely destabilizing for your life.
Absolutely. Everything you just said rationally makes so much sense. And I can relate to it as a really important part of being a better parent, let's say, if I'm taking care of my own needs. But when my girls got to an age where I realized that they were picking up on everything I did and internalizing it, and that it was affecting them in terms of what they were going to do in their lives and how they were going to be, that's when I was like, it really hit me
Mhm.
that, okay, if I don't figure out how to do these things for myself, is I can say whatever I want. They are smart. Kids are
Mhm.
smart. They pick it all up and it affects how they're going to treat themselves. And that was really compelling for me when I recognized that my lack of caring for myself, let's say, or having the right frame of mind was going to impact them very
Mhm.
directly in terms of how they were going to behave because they pick it up. That's just
Yeah.
how they are. Kids are smart.
And also how unrealistic it is, a one-way relationship. You're not gonna have
Mhm.
any other relationship like that in your life. So it's a
Mhm.
setup too. I think about, I have a lot of kind of sensory needs. I have a lot of auditory sensitivities. And so
Mhm.
my kids know that when they're making certain kinds of noises over and over again all day, that really fries me in such a
Mm.
way. And so the way that I talk to them about it's not shaming, it's not cruel, it's not anything other than, we are three humans in this room together,
Yeah.
and we need to figure out how to share space in such a way that all of us are comfortable. And
Yeah.
maybe I'm compromising a little, you're compromising a little. But again, it's that relational piece of, you can get your needs met, maybe not the whole thing of what you need in that moment, but in small ways, and setting up conversations with kids. And my kids are little, but they do get this. Like, I am
Mm.
a human who is here. And yes, it is my absolute job and joy to take care of you, but I can't do that just on nothing.
Yeah.
My needs have to come into play too. And I think that is really good for kids to know as well.
And that gives them such a great tool in their own lives in terms of when they do eventually get to the point where we're not telling them all the time what to think, what to do, how, or how to feel about something. Mara, I am so grateful for this time you spent today talking with us. If people want to follow you, find out about the book Needy, if they want to learn more about what you're doing, what is the best way for them to do that?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This has been awesome. If you want to come hang out with me, please do. You can find me at maraglatzel.com. You can find my book there. I have a fun quiz, which is what do you need right now, which has a bunch of resources for you. And you can also find me on Instagram at Mara Glatzel.
Thank you for listening. If you're an influencer or a brand that wants to work with us, please feel free to email us at info@shespeaks.com. Until next time.